What's that sound? It's for amusement only, the EM and Bingo Pinball Podcast.
Welcome back to For Amusement Only. This is Nick Baldridge. In the past couple of weeks, I've been working on a couple different projects, and I have a small announcement to make. So stay tuned for that. As far as the projects I've been working on, Robo-Frenzy is coming along. I have tested and fused, or rather placed fuses in the fuse holders for each of the main lines and tested them. Everything works except for the 30 volt line, of course the main one that powers the logic in the game. So I haven't been able to test those and haven't had a chance to figure out where my wiring job has gone wrong. I believe I'm connecting hot and neutral through the same switch, which would explain why it's not functioning. So I just have to go through and test that and make sure that's what's happening and rewire accordingly. But the 50 volt section works perfectly. The 6 volt section works except for some dirty switches. There's also a couple of cold solder joints, which I need to address in the lamp section. As part of the lamps, I'm not sure if I mentioned this last episode, but I added diodes to the octopus tentacles because those lamps required either dozens of switches for each position or diodes in order to prevent backflow through the other lamps, and it works well. So I'm very excited about that. All the appropriate relays light the appropriate lamps, unlight the appropriate lamps, do what they're supposed to do. So I've been through the game as far as that goes and verified function. Now it's just a matter of fine-tuning, doing a couple of switch adjustments, and of course seeing what happens with the 30 volt section once that starts working. I have a feeling that there will be a couple of logic errors that I need to address. But we shall see. So let's talk about multi-races. I've been working on that fairly diligently because with friends, family, etc., that's been going on around Christmas and New Year's, I really haven't had a chance to get down and get my hands burned up and all that kind of stuff with soldering. So instead, what I've been doing is working on multi-races, and I've been learning the portioning for each of the games and working backwards chronologically. I started with 1950s Bally Turf King and went up to the games that were built in 51, and then finally Sunshine Park in 1952, which is Bally's last one ball. And then I started moving backwards in time. One thing that's interesting is that the portioning for Turf King is very similar to the bingos from about 1953 on, but the earlier games used a completely different style of portioning. Don Hooker came on around sometime in the 40s. From what I can tell, based on the designs of these games. There was a marked difference when he came on as far as the guaranteed advancing odds, but also the use of the reflex unit. Now, I've talked about the reflex kind of ad nauseum, but it's a really ingenious device. It's very similar to a car differential in that the game can make multiple steps up and down, depending on exactly how it's set, how it's geared. So the ratio between the two makes a big difference as far as the movement of the unit itself. Now, the reflex is an auto-portioning device, and what I mean by that is if you win, the unit will step up a certain number of times, and if you are losing, every time you insert a coin, the unit will step down a certain number of times. So it's a very ingenious way of ensuring that the game doesn't give you too many features or too many special favors as you're playing, and instead keeps a relatively level playing field, especially if you're a very good player. I've always admired this unit because it's very simple in concept, but very, very complex in execution. So these older games, though, use something called the 400 to 1 unit. And what this is it's exactly what it sounds like, a gear with a ratio of 400 to 1. So there are certain posts which are set up at intervals on the backside of this unit, and once every 400 steps, the unit makes a full revolution. Now, depending on how switches are arrayed around it, some of them are only actuated once every 400 steps. It's pretty crazy when you think about it. That's 400 coins, in other words. So there's a lot of money that has to go through the game before it makes that revolution and activates whatever that particular feature is. Many of these games, kind of in the middle years here, in the late 40s, have guaranteed advancing odds, but also something called feature points. And these feature points are really kind of cool. And again, this is one of those once every 400 coins things, that feature number will advance. And say you complete the sequence of A, B, C, D with the bumpers on the playfield. When you hit the D, it will pay you, say, 20 coins multiplied by the number of coins that you've paid in for that particular game. So if you paid in 4 coins, then you get 80 coins back. Pretty incredible, and a good way to get you to put in those extra coins when you have A, B, and C lit already. So the interesting thing, though, is that the portioning is so very simplistic when compared to the games with the reflex units. There's really no nuance there. It is all based on the position of that one unit, rather than going through multiple units or multiple sets of switches or various player choice buttons or activities. No, instead it's all done through this 400 to 1 unit. Kind of crazy. So I'm back to Victory Derby and Victory Special. I just finished writing the rules for Victory Special, and I'm about to work on Victory Derby, which is the payout version of Victory Special. Victory Derby and Victory Special, well, first off, that's what the base game is that I'm taking and making into this multi-races, is a Victory Derby. But Victory Derby and Victory Special have this interesting feature called the Daily Double. And that feature, based on the position of the 401 unit and also the spotting disc, for lack of a better term, they didn't really have standardized nomenclature for that disc. Some of the later games called a horseshoe disc, but that's not really descriptive. It's just a 50-position disc with multiple rows of rivets in it. And depending on the position that the wipers land on, you'll be awarded something, or your odds are going to change, or your selection is going to change, the horses that you have to hit. Well, the Daily Double lights at random, and when it lights, you have to get one of 2 horses, and they'll light underneath the selection. And whichever the first horse you get has to be in the first 2 sections of the playfield. So the 4 sections of the playfield are purse, show, place, and win if you're descending the playfield. So the very top is purse, and the very bottom is win. So the first horse you have to get in purse or place. And if you don't, then the Daily Double feature goes away. But if you do, then the next ball has to land in win for whatever horse you didn't hit the first time. Very difficult to do, but if you do, you get 20 replays multiplied by the number of coins you played. So again, you can get up to 80 replays depending on how many coins you played. Pretty good deal, but very difficult to do. On the actual game, I have done that exactly 0 times, but I haven't had a huge amount of time to play that game yet, so it's hard to say just how frequently that happens. The other games, we're getting older now, so the paperwork for them is going to be non-existent. Victory Derby and Victory Special were the first games that were built post-war by Bally. So figuring out what happens in some of these older games is going to be very tricky indeed, but I'll see what I can do. Most of them are far more simplistic than Victory Derby and Victory Special. It really wasn't until post-war that they started adding a lot of come-on features, things like the Daily Double, that would allow the player to really get a feel for what makes this game special. So I'm hopeful that these earlier games will fall rather quickly, but we'll see. Now, what I'm doing as far as coding is writing the rules first, and then I'm going back and writing the graphics. The graphics are extremely labor-intensive. That was the thing that took the most time on the multi-bingo, was doing the graphics for each individual game. So I will be doing that again for the multi-races, but what this allows me to do, this particular approach, is that I can finish the rules and therefore maintain the knowledge of the portioning for each game in my head as I go, and it makes doing the next successive one easier. Now, big shifts in how the portioning functions, for example, the change from reflex to 400 to 1 unit, really throw me, because I'm not going forward in time, so I'm removing features with each game that I make, and I'm also changing, the way that everything functions within the game. It's actually been very difficult, and I kind of wish I had done it the other way around, but oh well. I'm already committed to this method, and we'll see if it gets any easier as I go. Hopefully so. So that's multi-races. I've got everything laid out on top of the game, ready to install. I have the circuit boards in place. I've tested their position. I have to order some connectors so that I can, start doing the wiring. I've got the playfield pulled out. I just have to do some cleaning of that and a little bit of tweaking, make sure it fits within the game, and I should be good to go. Now, another thing that I've done is I purchased some proximity sensors. These are going to be installed under the playfield, and for a game like Futurity, for example, where various springs are used as contacts, I will place a proximity sensor under the playfield as long as there's enough room, and that proximity sensor will sense when the ball is very near, and therefore close a switch, basically. So thankfully, these things, with the help of the homebrew community, I asked the question about proximity sensors, and somebody there gave me some very good advice on those. A particular type has to be used. I believe it's PNP, but don't quote me on that. The two different types, they're transistor types, so it's NPN or PNP, and I believe it's PNP, and you wire them up as a standard switch, so you have a normally open side and then a common side, and when the ball gets near, it automatically closes that switch. Pretty cool. So I'm looking forward to experimenting with that, installing brackets underneath that'll protect these switches, and making sure that they actually fit, all that kind of stuff. So maybe by a month or so from now, I'll have done that work, but we'll see. I have quite a bit of wiring to do on the playfield, and that's going to take me a bit of time. So that's pretty much it for multi-races. Robo-Frenzy, I have some tweaks to do, some things. I need to drill the Bakelite discs, which I talked about, I believe, last episode, for the player units and the player position units. Once that's done, I can wire them fully into the game and, of course, test everything where I mentioned before the 30 volts wasn't working. So once I have that, everything should function, and I can test the entire logic flow, even without the hand wheels installed. And that should come soon, relatively speaking. In other news, and this is the big news I mentioned, I'm headed to Texas Pinball Festival in March. So if you plan to be there, look forward to playing the multi-bingo, because that's coming with me as well. And it will be available for play. And I will have made a tweak to the menu system. At the moment, it takes approximately 30 seconds to start a game, or to get back to the menu, rather. Starting a game is very quick. But I'm going to change the way the menu functions so that it should load instantaneously almost. We'll see how that translates in real world, but at the moment, I think it's going to work great. So I will keep you apprised as we get closer to the date, but mark your calendars, come out and play the multi-bingo, and see if you can win a prize. I should have a couple of prizes with me. Well, today's featured game is Gottlieb's 1957 Ace High. Now, some of you may be familiar with this game if you've spent any time with the Pinball Hall of Fame Gottlieb collection on consoles, and I believe it was on PC back in the GameCube era. But this game is a very interesting game from a rules perspective. It utilizes 3 bullseye targets, and these targets that Gottlieb made would award points or something for hitting on the edges, and it would either award a higher point value or add to a sequence if you hit it directly dead on in the center. So on Ace High, the sides of the targets, the bullseye targets, award 50,000 points, but if you hit them in the center, they add to a sequence, and there's 3 independent sequences. These sequences are very simple. There are only 3 positions in the sequence. You have Queen, King, and Ace. And you can light Queen, King, and Ace at all 3 of these bullseye targets. And if you do, then landing in the appropriate gobble hole will award you a certain number of replays. And it can be quite exciting indeed. If you have even 1 ace lit, then you get 1 replay automatically. If you have, and for each ace that you add, by the way, you get another replay. If you have 3 queens lit, you get 1 replay. If you have 3 kings lit, you get 3 replays. And if you have all 3 aces hit and land in the lit hole, then you will earn 8 replays in one go. That's pretty sweet. Now, there are rollovers on the playfield as well. And if you hit the spade, heart, diamond, and club rollovers, it'll light the out hole for special. Now, normally, I don't like out hole special games. They feel like you're being rewarded to drain in a different way than gobble holes. Gobble holes feel like skillful draining to me, if that makes sense. And out hole specials feel like, we're making you drain so that you get a replay. In this case, though, it feels like a consolation prize. You may not have achieved the sequence that you wanted. You may not have gotten all 3 aces lit. However, you can still have a replay. It's okay. So let's talk about the playfield layout in general and where those rollovers are, because this makes a difference for that consolation prize as well. The rollovers are actually the outlanes, and there's 2 sets on either side. Starting from the left, you have a spade, then a heart, then a diamond, then a club. And each rollover will also light the associated pop bumper. There's 4 different colors. So the spade is green, the heart is red, the diamond is yellow, and the club is white. And there are pop bumpers which match those colors up above. So for each rollover that you hit, you not only light the pop bumpers, you also turn off the light for that particular suit. And again, once you have all 4, you light the out hole for special. But you also get 100,000 points for hitting those rollovers. So with each ball that you drain, it's imperative that you actually hit one of the out lanes rather than landing in the out hole directly, straight down the middle. Now, impeding that progress, or that process rather, are these bullseye targets, because they're what you're really trying to hit. And the geometry is such that every shot is very dangerous from the flippers. You can pretty easily peg the left and right bullseye targets. However, the return from those is either going to come straight down and hit the slings, which are directly below, which score 100,000 points, or they'll come down and hit the slings right above the flippers, which are very dangerous. So it's a game that's filled with a lot of action and danger, a lot of drama. So these are things that I enjoy in games. Now, the lit hole that I mentioned, the holes are actually between the pop bumpers. So the pop bumpers are arrayed kind of in a semicircle up at the top of the playfield. And there are 3 passive bumpers, which have a logo of a crown on them. However, I don't know what those award. The gobble holes, however, are right in the center, above that center bullseye target, and there's 2 of them. If they are not lit and you land in them, you get 500,000 points. If they are lit, you get 1,000,000 points. Now, when they're lit, they may also be lit for special. And when they're lit and you hit them, that's when you earn the replays from the bullseye targets. So as you can tell, this is a very difficult game, but it's one that I enjoy playing very much. I played it virtually quite a bit, but did play it in real life at the York Show. I think back in 2012 there was one there. There were quite a few really great games that year, but this is one of them, and very much enjoy it. Arrayed around the pop bumpers, there are switches behind rubbers, so you can get some good action between the pops and these stand-up switches. I don't know how much those score, but I'm going to assume it's 10,000 points. Could very well be very wrong. So let's talk about artwork. This is one of the more salacious, I suppose, art packages for the time, 1957. The concept is a harem, and you've got the Sultan, who is playing cards with the harem girls, and they are relatively scantily clad, especially for the time period. A lot of transparent gauze type stuff that they're wearing. Beautiful scenery on the back glass. They're sitting kind of in the foreground on a blanket and playing cards, and in the background is the palace with this huge pool leading up to a balcony that one of the ladies is standing upon, and the credit unit is right in the center of the back glass. Kind of unusual, but very cool. The 1,000,000 points are arrayed in a ribbon up near the top, and it comes down in a semicircle down into the frame with the palace, and then arrayed around the entire opening to the balcony is a purple ribbon, which contains your 100,000 points. So 100,000 to 900,000 are arrayed through there. And down at the bottom, you have Gottlieb's famous motto, or one of their famous mottos anyway. It says, "Amusement pinballs as American as baseball and hot dogs." The playfield is equally beautiful. You have essentially the same scene, and there's the Sultan, but in this case he is shuffling a deck of cards in front of the ladies from the harem. They're watching with amused and loving expressions on their faces. There's the familiar opening to the courtyard and balcony from the back glass, but the positions of everybody are a little different. So it's as if he's suggesting that they play some cards on the playfield, and then on the back glass they actually have started the game. Very appealing, very attractive artwork on both the back glass and the playfield. A lot of green, which is a little unusual, and I find this game to be a winner. I mean, it's a lot of fun to play. I enjoy it very much. Now, the cabinet artwork is incongruous, I guess you'd say, as is most of the cabinet artwork from the time period. You have red circles on a white background with green rectangles. And up near the flipper buttons and proceeding along through the top of the cabinet and up near the head, you have alternating red and white rectangles with a border of green. On the side of the head, you have the same red and white rectangles. As I mentioned, they go up, and a red background with white circles, and then two semicircles that are red cut through with a green line that's coming off of that green border that's surrounding the red and white rectangles. So again, not exactly what you'd imagine if I came up to you and said, the game's name is Ace High, develop an art package for it. And a lot of that is because the art for the cabinets was done by the cabinet making company. And so they were provided with these complete cabinets, and then they put the appropriate game in them, as they saw fit. At least that's the story I've been told. So, very interesting when you think about it, how difficult it would be to produce something like that was, in fact, somewhat matching. All right, well, that's all for tonight. Thank you very much for joining me. My name again is Nick Baldridge. You can reach me at foramusementonlypodcast@gmail.com, or you can call me on the Bingos line. That's 724-BINGOS1, 724-246-4671. You can listen to me on iTunes, Stitcher, Pocket Cast, Google Play Music, on Spotify, and you can listen to me on my website, which is foramusementonly.libsyn.com. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll talk to you next time.